Breaking news. Ukraine knocks out a key Crimean power hub.
A huge one.
It is Saturday, January 31st, 2026, and we are looking at a massive blow against the Russian occupation in Crimea. I mean, we aren't just talking about the lights flickering out.
No, this is much bigger. We're talking about blinding the military, severing that critical energy land bridge.
The Zakhidnokrymsk substation, the absolute heart of the Western Crimean grid, has been successfully neutralized.
And if you are supporting Ukraine, this is precisely the kind of strategic masterstroke you've been waiting for.
Before we get into all the details, just a quick reminder for everyone listening. Subscribe to Defense Reports. It's your go-to source for timely, in-depth military and defense reports.
And trust me, with how fast things are moving on the ground, you really, you need to stay updated.
I'm Alex. Join me with Ari in the latest Deep Dive by Defense Report for sharp, no-nonsense breakdowns of the latest in global defense news, military technology, and strategic developments. And today we're going to cover the confirmation that Ukraine has gutted the Zakhidnokrymsk substation.
A strike that essentially paralyzes Russian logistics in Western Crimea. But, you know, that's really not all we're covering today. We have a packed briefing.
Exactly. We'll also look at the satellite images that prove Ukraine didn't just hit a pier in Novorossiysk, they actually forced a Russian submarine to flee.
And we'll take you inside this secret sabotage mission in Kaliningrad where agents didn't even use bombs. They drained the coolant to melt a transformer from the inside out.
And then there's the chilling reality of Russia's Winter of Submission campaign and why Moscow is targeting the specific wires that keep Ukraine's nuclear plants from melting down. So let's unpack this. It's January 31st, 2026. Let's start with the headline event. What exactly happened at Zakhidnokrymsk?
Okay, so late last night, we got confirmation from both Deep State and Militarny, two very, very reliable open source intelligence groups, that the Zakhidnokrymsk substation was hit.
And when you say hit, what are we actually looking at? This isn't just a downed power line, is it?
Oh, not at all. We're not looking at something that gets fixed in an hour. Satellite imagery confirms the total destruction of the control building, the transformer, which is known as AT1, and a 22.5 megawatt mobile gas turbine plant that was parked there.
I want to pause on that mobile gas turbine part. That suggests the Russians knew this node was vulnerable and were trying to bolster it, right?
That's a fair assessment, yeah. They were trying to build a redundancy because they absolutely knew how fragile this sector was. But the destruction of the AT1 transformer, that's the real story here.
Why that specifically?
Well, transformers of that size, I mean, we are talking about massive industrial equipment the size of a house. You can't just buy them off the shelf. They take months, sometimes years to manufacture. Losing one is a long-term infrastructure scar.
So for those of us listening who might not be electrical engineers, help us understand the geography.
Yeah.
Why does this one substation matter so much? Is it just residential lights going out?
It's so much more than that. This is a 330 kilovolt node. In the world of power grids, that's a major artery. It powers the entire western coast of the occupied peninsula, specifically the cities of Yevpatoria and Saki.
Okay.
But strategically, you have to think of it as a single point of failure. When you take this out, you're not just cutting power to homes, you're cutting the main line to military bases, to airfields, and to crucial radar stations in that whole sector.
This feels like part of a larger pattern. We've talked about this concept of the energy land bridge before. This isn't the first major outage in Crimea recently.
It is absolutely a pattern. To really get the significance of today's news, you have to rewind to December 14th, 2025. That was the strike on the Junkoy substation up in the north.
Right, Junkoy. That was a huge disruption.
It was. That strike cut power to 450 settlements. But here's the key insight for our listeners. The Russian military relies heavily on electric rail.
For logistics.
For everything. They move tanks, ammunition, heavy gear to the southern front, primarily by train, and those trains run on electric traction systems.
So if you cut the substation,
the trains stop. The logistics chain just freezes. And in modern warfare, a tank that can't get to the front is just a very heavy paperweight. So they hit the north at Jankoy to stop the supplies, and now they've hit the west at Zakhidnokrymsk to blind the coastal defenses.
it really sounds like a systematic dismantling. I'm curious about the mechanics, though. I mean, substation's a small target, and you assume it's heavily defended. How did they get a drone through?
That is the fascinating part. You can't just fly a slow-moving drone into a substation if the air defense network is active. So Ukraine paved the way. They blinded the Russian defense first.
This was the radar hunting campaign we heard about.
Yes, exactly. They took out a Costa 2E2 radar, which is specifically designed for low-altitude detection, perfect for spotting drones. They also hit a 96 L6E radar.
That's a mouthful of an acronym.
It is, but it's critical. That radar is a key component of the S-400 missile system. It's the eyes of the beast.
So by taking out those eyes,
They created a blind spot in the coverage, a corridor that allowed the drones to slip through completely untouched right to the Zakhidnokrymsk substation.
so they poked out the eyes, then went for the jugular. It just highlights the sequencing of modern operations. You don't attack the target, you attack the defenses protecting the target first.
It's classic CA'd suppression of enemy air defenses, just, executed with drones. And the domino effect is immediate. You mentioned Saki earlier. That's a major airbase in western Crimea.
Right.
Is Zakhidnokrymsk power Saki and the power is cut? Well, that base is now running on generators.
And generators need fuel, which puts even more strain on a logistics chain that's already been hit. Speaking of Saki, there was that massive strike there back on November 28th.
There was a joint op between the Ukrainian Navy and Special Operations Forces. And again, the precision is what really stands out. They didn't just crater the runway. That's easy to fix with some asphalt.
They went for the high-value assets. I remember seeing the damage assessment. It was extensive.
Extensive is putting it mildly. They destroyed the command and control tower. That's the brain of the airbase. Without it, coordinating sorties becomes an absolute nightmare. But the big win was taking out the storage sites for the Orion attack drones.
The Orion. That's Russia's attempt at a heavy strike drone, sort of like a Reaper or a Bayraktar, yeah.
That's the one. It's one of their few platforms capable of long-endurance surveillance and strike. Losing them while they're sitting in storage is just a humiliating blow. They were destroyed before they could even get into the fight.
And they also hit some serious air defense gear on the ground at the base itself, didn't they?
Yes, Tor M2 and Panzer S1 systems. These are mobile systems designed to protect the base from exactly what hit them. They even took out a rare Zu-23-2 anti-aircraft gun mounted on a Kamaz truck.
Wow.
It suggests the Russians were scrambling, just putting whatever they had on the perimeter, but it just wasn't enough.
So the air bases are getting hammered, the power grid is down. Let's pivot to the sea. The Black Sea Fleet has been having a rough couple of years, but this recent incident with the submarine in Novorossiysk feels different.
It represents a shift in reach. We're talking about the Marshavyanka class sub. The Russians call it the Black Hole because it operates so quietly. A diesel-electric sub designed to be invisible.
And there was a lot of back and forth on this back in mid-December. Ukraine claimed a hit, Russia said everything was fine. Now that we have the satellite analysis, what's the actual verdict?
The verdict is somewhere in the middle, but it's still disastrous for Russia. The strike was around December 15th or 16th. And the satellite imagery shows the drone didn't punch a hole in the sub's hull. It hit the corner of the pier, just meters away from where the sub was berthed.
So technically Russia can say, you missed.
They can say that, sure, but just think about the implications. SBU drones got into Novorossiysk. That is supposed to be a secure naval harbor deep inside Russian territory, a sanctuary.
And not only did they get in,
They filmed it. It's a huge psychological blow. It's saying, we can touch you anywhere.
it creates paranoia.
It does. But there's a physical impact, too. The explosion turned the pier into rubble. And that pier is necessary for the cranes and logistics equipment used to load Kalibr cruise missiles onto the submarine.
Ah, I see. You can't just hand load a cruise missile. You need heavy machinery.
Exactly. If the pier is destroyed, the sub can't rearm efficiently. It forces the fleet to retreat even further, to find other safe harbors. We're now seeing Russian tankers, like the Strateg, literally hiding along the Turkish coast.
Hiding in NATO waters.
Effectively, yeah, hugging the coastline, trying to use the territorial waters of a NATO member as a shield against Ukrainian naval drones. It paints a picture of a fleet that is just terrified of operating in the open sea.
That is a stunning reversal for a country that is technically a major naval power. Okay, so Crimea is under siege, the fleet is hiding. But there's this phrase Ukrainian intelligence uses, Russia has no rear.
And what that means is that geographic distance no longer provides any safety. And they are proving it with industrial sabotage deep inside Russia.
Which brings us to the Energia plant in Yelets, Lipetsk Oblast. That's hundreds of kilometers from the front line.
It is. It was struck on January 4th, 2026, and also previously back in May of 25.
So why keep hitting this one plant? What makes Energia so special?
One word: batteries.
Batteries. That sounds surprisingly mundane.
It sounds mundane until you realize what those batteries power. This plant is the sole producer of batteries for the guidance modules on Kyiv, those guided aerial bombs that have been pounding Ukrainian front lines, and for the Iskander-M ballistic missiles.
Wait, so this is a bottleneck, a single point of failure in their supply chain.
A critical choke point. You can have the explosives, the steel fins, the guidance chips, but if you don't have the specific high-performance battery to power that guidance chip during flight, your smart bomb becomes a dumb rock.
That is incredible leverage. Taking out one factory impacts the efficacy of literally thousands of bombs.
And the satellite images show a production building completely destroyed. It forces Russia to either find a new supplier, which is very hard with sanctions, or redesign their weapons, which takes time they just don't have.
A surgical strike on the supply chain. But there was another operation you mentioned that felt less like a military strike and more like a spy thriller. The Kaliningrad sabotage.
This one is fascinating because it wasn't a drone strike. This was agents on the ground back in June of 25.
Walk us through it. What did they do?
They infiltrated a substation in Kaliningrad, that heavily militarized Russian enclave between Poland and Lithuania. But they didn't just plant a bomb and run. They physically drained the coolant from the transformer.
They drained the coolant, like draining the oil from a car engine.
It's a similar concept with catastrophic results. Once the coolant was gone, they set it on fire. But even without the fire, a transformer under load without coolant suffers catastrophic thermal failure from the inside out. It just melts into a slag heap.
That's incredibly low tech, but so high impact.
It caused an estimated $5 million in damage and cut power to military production sites in the region. It sends a message. We are walking among you. We can open your gates. We can touch your infrastructure.
So Ukraine is hitting the grid, the factories, the logistics. How is Russia responding? Because the reports we are seeing about this winter of submission campaign are just terrifying.
And this is the dark side of this conflict. Russia has shifted tactics significantly. In previous years, they targeted thermal power plants.
Right.
But most of those are already destroyed or heavily damaged. So now they are targeting the transmission nodes, the 750 kilovolt and 330 kilovolt substations.
Why those specific voltages? What's the significance there?
Because those are the high voltage lines that connect Ukraine's nuclear power plants to the grid. The goal is to disconnect the Kamitsky and Rivne nuclear power plants.
They are trying to disconnect the nuclear plants. That sounds incredibly dangerous.
It is playing with fire on a continental scale. The IAEA director Rafael Grossi called it nuclear safety on a single wire. Here's the physics of it. Nuclear plants need external power to run their cooling systems. If you cut them off from the grid, what's called a loss of offsite power, the reactors have to emergency scram or shut down. Then they have to rely on diesel generators to keep the fuel rods cool.
And if the generators fail, or if they run out of diesel,
then you are looking at a meltdown scenario. The Zaporizhzhia NPP has already lost external power 8 times during this war, forcing it to run on diesel. Every single time that happens, you're rolling the dice.
and meanwhile, on the human level, it's January.
It is negative 15 degrees Celsius. In Kyiv alone, 5,600 apartment buildings lost heating recently because of these power cuts. In December of 2025 alone, there were 27 massive waves of attacks on energy infrastructure.
So the strategy is literally to freeze the population into submission.
Intelligence calls it unacceptable surrender demands. It is defined as a genocidal campaign. The logic is brutal, but it's simple. Make life so unbearable for the civilian population that they force their own government to capitulate just to stay warm.
It's a war of attrition against the civilian will. But Ukraine is fighting back, not just with grid, but with some very specific tech. Let's talk about the vampire.
Ah, the vampire. Or as the Russians call it, Baba Yaga.
I love that name. Baba Yaga, the witch from Slavic folklore who flies around in a mortar, right?
She is, and she steals children. And it's a fitting name because these drones are terrifying for Russian infantry. In 2025, the Vampire bomber drone was statistically the most effective strike system on the front line.
What makes it so effective compared to a standard FPV drone?
It's a heavy hexacopter 6 rotors. It's big, it's loud, and it's industrial. It can hover, and it can drop multiple heavy munitions with extreme precision, often at night using thermal optics. It doesn't just crash into you, it hunts you, drops a bomb, and flies back to rearm.
So it's reusable.
Exactly. It's psychological warfare as much as it is physical.
And how are the Russians adapting? I saw something about cage armor on trucks.
They're getting desperate. We're seeing GAZ-66 trucks, which are just standard transport trucks welded with these massive makeshift cages to protect their Zemeldeli mining systems.
So they're afraid of a direct hit on the mines.
They're terrified of the vampires dropping charges right onto the mining equipment, which would set off a massive chain reaction. It's a constant cat and mouse game.
Speaking of cat and mouse, the Shadow Fleet.
This is the economic front line. Ukraine has identified 66 vessels that operate in the shadows, using flags from countries like Gabon to bypass sanctions and move Russian oil. This is how Russia funds the war.
But there was some movement there, right? France actually detained one.
They did. France detained a Shadow Fleet tanker recently. Now, they eventually released it due to legal complexities. Maritime law is tricky, but it shows that the net is tightening. Ukraine is actively hunting these vessels diplomatically and physically.
And on the tech front, I saw SpaceX is launching something new.
Yes, on January 31st, SpaceX launched Stargaze. It's a situational awareness system. In a war that relies so heavily on satellite communications and reconnaissance, any upgrade in orbital capability is significant.
It really highlights how this is a war for technology. From localized repairs, I read Ukraine is now restoring engines from downed Shahed drones to use in their own UAVs.
And that is a perfect example of resilience. They shoot down an Iranian-designed Shahed, salvage the engine, fix it, and put it in a Ukrainian drone to send right back at Russian targets. It's efficient, resourceful, and frankly, a bit of poetic justice.
And diplomatically, I saw Switzerland made a move.
A controversial one. Switzerland eased arms export rules for 25 countries, but, and this is a big but, they explicitly excluded Ukraine.
That has to be frustrating for Kyiv.
It is. But it reinforces why domestic production, like the vampire drones and those localized repairs, is so critical. Ukraine realizes it cannot rely solely on fickle partners. It has to rely on its own ingenuity.
So let's try to synthesize all of this. We have Ukraine systematically dismantling the Russian war machine, from the Zakhidnokrymsk grid in Crimea all the way to bomb factories in Lipetsk. They're blinding the radars, trapping the fleet, and burning the rear.
And in response, Russia is resorting to what can only be described as nuclear blackmail and freezing civilians. They're targeting the very nodes that keep nuclear disasters at bay because they cannot win on the battlefield.
So here's a final provocative thought for you to chew on. Ukraine is proving that with precise intelligence like knowing exactly which transformer to drain coolant from and localized tech like the vampire drone, a smaller force really can blind a giant.
The question for 2026 then is this. Can the international community step in to stop this nuclear blackmail before the grid snaps completely? Because if one of those nuclear substations fails at the wrong moment, the fallout won't stop at the Ukrainian border.
That is a terrifying thought, but one we absolutely need to face. You've been listening to Defense Report by Alex and Aria, where we analyze the latest in military strategy, global defense, and advanced weaponry.
Thanks for joining us.
Subscribe to Defense Reports, your go-to source for timely, in-depth military and defense reports. We'll catch you next time.